I will not stand there because I will look as a mushroom. Wasn't it Cynthia who said that? Because these podiums, they are patriarchal inventions. You know, you have to be tall and you have to look in a certain way. I don't. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. You cannot imagine how big this is for me. I mean, to stand on the same stage as my icon, Angela Davis. And to share this safe space with you, feminists, activists from around the world. And you know, everything you said so far, it's been therapy to me. It's the first time in my life that I didn't feel so lonely. It's the first time in my life I felt normal. Now I know how it is. And it's all thanks to you and your bravery and your courage. And I was not supposed to be here. First, and also, sorry for my English if I think in Greek and Swedish, so it's a mess in my head. But I will do my best. And I was not supposed to even be here. I mean, not in my wildest dreams, because this is me. I was born in a laundry room in a dictatorship. My parents had to flee their homes. They were not supposed to be together. They swaddled me, as they have done with girls around the world since the first boy was born. Symbolically, in any way. From the feet to squeezing, to reducing us, to belittling us in any way. And when I ask my mother, why did you do this to me? For 1 year, I was looking like a sausage. She says, we tried to straighten out your body to be able to marry you away. And they didn't manage, I'm still unmarried. But it's on my bucket list. I want to marry one day, anyhow. And they said to me, we did this to you because we didn't want all these big gestures that babies do, you know. And that's exactly what they do with girls around the world. They try to silence them, to put them in these small claustrophobic boxes. You know that. I think that many, many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's so funny, because when I, many, many years later, in another part of the world, far away from that poor little laundry room, I was also swaddled, symbolically. When I started working for Swedish TV, they said, sit on your hands. And they put tape on my face, not to make too many, expressions. And they said, this is how you should behave. And they showed me a Swedish white man. You should be like this guy. Oh, so I have to... So this is how it all began. After 1 year, suddenly, this is my father. This is the man that made me to a feminist. He didn't even know the word. He doesn't even still, I think. He's a cleaner. He was a terrible, absent father. He was abusive, aggressive, and everything. He made a career. He went from a cleaner to a window cleaner, which is much better. And he only went to school during 4 or 5 years. And he's a kid from the war. He never met his father, who was killed during the war. So he has many excuses of being, that violent and abusive father. But he gave me 2 advices when I met him sporadically during my childhood. He said to me, never, ever become a kitchen slave or a mattress. That's it. And I did my best. This is where I grew up. My parents were so poor. We live in the cradle of democracy that was a dictatorship, Greece. And they left me with my grandmother, the woman in the middle. Her name was Sophia, which means wisdom in Greece. She was married away when she was only 14 years old. She lost her mother, Alexandra, very early. She never got to school. She couldn't read, she couldn't write, and I lived with her for 3 years. And she taught me the most important lessons in life. She taught me what it is to be brave and have a backbone. And that has nothing to do with literacy. So I grew up with her. She survived 2 wars, dictatorships. She had to flee. She lost 2 kids in the war. And the man next to her is my grandfather. He was one of the leaders in the Greek resistance movement when the German Nazis invaded Greece. And they destroyed everything. And this little man, who here he has a, how do you say, he lost his leg when he was shot by Nazis, so he had a 3 leg, a prothese, whatever. Big heart, he ended up, and this is the only thing I own. This is my only heritage. I can't sell it, but it's the thing that I'm most proud of. He ended up in a couple of Greek history books, named Nikolaos Damianidis as one of the heroes, the man who gave his life, who sacrificed everything to fight for democracy and human rights. And I am so proud of that. And I think that the most of you in here know exactly what your legacy will be, because you are the people that stand up. But when I see this picture, I also feel very, very sad, because my grandmother, who had to flee in the middle of the night with all the women and the kids in their arms, that lost kids that were killed, and they had to flee across the borders, they were never, ever mentioned in the history books. Nowhere in the world. They were systematically erased. Their strength was not strong enough. Their heroism was not heroic enough, only because they were women. I can tell you so many stories about this. This is me in the middle, but we don't have time. We moved to paradise. We asked for asylum in Sweden, and I ended up in a newspaper. And you can tell I had ambitions at an early age. My family was devastated. We were deported. We were hiding without papers for 2 years. I look happy. I pose. I was like, there must be something better than this shit. And this is our first home. We're hiding. My mother is cleaning. And my father left the country for 2.5 years, working on a boat, traveling around the world. And we were like starving, but we were so happy because Sweden was a paradise. There was hot water coming, and it was for free. We didn't have to pay it. And it was like, there were ovens and everything was modern. And we could like run around. It was so beautiful. We were very happy, but what I didn't know is I ended up in a hell in Sweden. That was what the others, called my suburb. I grew up in RIKK. It's a small, small suburb. It's the poorest suburb in Sweden. And when they talked about us, they always talked about us like problems, parasites, burden, the unwanted, or the most wanted. It depends. And I grew up speaking Greek and, in this little area. And when I turned 11, 12, I started studying Swedish. And suddenly, I was so proud of my Greek heritage. And suddenly I read, they called us blackheads. They called us migrants. They said, go home, migrants. And they said about Rinkeby the worst things you could ever imagine, only because we were a majority, people from around the world, refugees and migrants, and we were poor people. We were working class people. We were cleaning their offices, and they hated us for doing that. And I grew up here understanding on a very early age what it is to be invisible. I joined my parents to their offices where they were cleaning, and nobody even said hi to us. They didn't even greet us, like we were non-existing. And suddenly, when you're invisible, you do everything to become visible. And when you become visible and when you get a voice, what do you do then? You use your privilege, because I sacrificed so much and I've been fighting so much to reach this point. You use your voice and your privilege to give it to others. So here I hanged out with Roma beggars, people begging on the streets, homeless for 1 year, to do a series of documentaries for Swedish TV. I did, okay, you can see I did everything. And how the hell did I do so much? Because when I apply for jobs, I mostly get a no. And that's what they call discrimination. Even if I have a longer CV than the most of them. And when I ask them, when I confront them and ask, why do you always prefer that blonde, blue-eyed, white lady that has the half of my CV? They say to me, you awaken too many feelings. And what kind of feelings and what kind of emotions do I awaken in you? They mean I awaken so many feelings among angry white men. And, you know, it's a miracle I'm still standing here. Because since 1995, the half of you were not even existing at that time. I received like big boxes with so many letters, you know, threatening me to kill me, to cut my tongue off, to break my knees, to rape me, to do anything you can imagine. Since 1995, only because I was a working class kid, a woman, a migrant from Rinkeby, standing in Swedish TV saying what was given. I said, I believe in human rights, I believe in democracy, and I was doing a weekly TV show, a multicultural magazine. And for that reason, they even came to my home, masked and armed, a Nazi terrorist group. And they did things like that all the time. This was my daily life. But at this point, I was lucky. You know why? Because for the first time in my life, after so many years, they took it seriously. The police suddenly did something, and you know why? Because at this point, they didn't only threaten me, they also threatened the head of the Swedish police force. He was a white Swedish man, and his life mattered. So suddenly, we went to trial. Okay, the Nazis were freed, finally. And what happened? How did this story end? I write about this in my first book. The story ended as it does very often for raped girls around the world. I was the one to blame. I provoked the Nazi threats. Nobody said that about the police, the head of the police. They said that about me. They kicked me out from my job. I was a successful TV hostess. I lost my job. And you know how they explained the victim blaming and the slut shaming? They said, we are afraid. And I said to them, you can't be afraid. You don't need to be afraid. They are threatening to kill me. And I don't take it personally. This is not about me. This is political. This is not a threat against Alexandra. This is a threat against democracy. And you have to stand up, like my grandfather did, like so many people did. And they said, no, you sit down and you go out. So I went home and I wrote a book, Revenge. You know, crying doesn't really take you anywhere. So I did whatever I did, and they still do. The Nazis are still there, and they're racist. This is from the book fair. When I was going to present my most recent book, they were standing there calling me a traitor. Well, suddenly I'm Swedish. I don't know what to say. If I'm a traitor, I'm very, very honored, very proud to be considered a traitor by these men. Thank you so much. But my worst problem is, and my biggest fear, is that the system, the media managers, the bosses, fear these guys. And they do everything to exclude people like me. And they do everything to promote a homogeneous image that doesn't awaken too many feelings. You know? You know exactly what I mean. And I'm also proud. There are days where I wake up with this racist rage echoing in my ear and violence, verbal violence, and against also my daughter. She's only 11 years. And I'm really afraid because I don't have somebody supporting me. My family is so dysfunctional you cannot even describe it. You know, so I have nothing, and I have nothing. I'm a freelance fighter, so whatever. There are days I'm like, okay, thinking of ancient Greeks and my Greek heritage. And Greece gave us democracy, and Greece gave us meritocracy. But it was Greece that gave us misogyny. Greece gave us xenophobia. Greece gave us the barbar, the other. And we have so many reasons to feel ashamed of our common heritage. And but Greece also gave us equality. I live in the paradise of gender equality in Sweden. And we are so proud being Swedish. But come on, it already started in the Olymp, you know, the mountain. There was a reason that they had 6 men and 6 women. I mean, without quotas. Wasn't that interesting? But there were like a lot going on. And, you know, Pandora's box, I think MeToo is a great metaphor. Pandora's box is a great metaphor for what happened. You know, all the terrible things leaving that jar, that box. But at the bottom of the box, and we have to remember this, is hope. And not like hallelujah hope, but hope that asks for action. An action where we have to act together in solidarity with each other. And when I say solidarity, I also mean the women I met in Gaza. They are heroic women, but they never, and they are oppressed, and there are so many layers of oppression against them, and they're at the bottom fighting, and nobody even gives a shit about or trying to give them a voice. Or the women in Bosnia I recently met half a year ago, raped women during the war and their kids, the result of rapes. UN soldiers raped these women and left. And now the kids, thanks to MeToo, they're organizing. And you know, I'm thinking of our Greek history. I'm so proud, you know. It's very patriotic. And this is Europe. It's a bad picture. I don't know how to do a PowerPoint. This is like Europe. I mean, Europe, our continent. It's a raped young girl. And she's not the only one who was raped by Zeus and other gods. There's a long list, and we don't have time to talk about this. But what happened to these gods? Nothing. She was the slut. And here we have so many. Do you recognize this woman? Yes, of course you do, with the phallic symbol. This is what they did. Already in the misogynist mythology, they transformed women to monsters. And they had their heroes, of course. And here is Trump, the man. The reason, you see, this is like really legalizing, how do you say, normalizing male violence against women. This is like, oh, our hero. And this is the Greek democracy, we don't have time. And when I how do you say, photo Googled, CEO, because I wanted to choose a title for myself, because when you're freelance, you can call yourself whatever you want. So I was like, oh, CEO sounds nice. And then I got this, like all these white dudes with blue ties. And there's, of course, one woman. The first woman you see is Barbie, the best woman in the world. And why is she so good? This iconic role model, because she's swaddled. She has this perfect body, big breasts, you know, everything, and she's silenced. She always smiles, always happy. This is extremely revealing, I think. You know this guy, of course, I don't need to understand. It's thanks to him that we have MeToo. Because we were shocked. We were like, can it get worse? And this started, and I was very happy. And this is the reason. And we cannot forget, and we cannot honor enough how it all started. Of course, the Hollywood glamour helped a bit, because you know that white lives matter more. You know that. But we have always, and I'm so proud because I wrote the first MeToo book in the world with 82 women, from Holocaust survivors to the Swedish EU commissioner that shared stories. And of course, I'm so proud because Tarana Burke wrote in that book. Yeah. I pretend, give me 1 minute, I pretend I don't see you. This is a book, whatever, you should read it. It's like from a 16-year-old Muslim girl in the poorest ghetto of Sweden. And this is what toxic masculinity looks like. This is a Swedish Academy awarding the Nobel Prize. And what did they do after sexual harassment allegations and rape and so on? What did they do? Oh, they canceled the Nobel Prize last year. And I was furious, living in a paradise, being privileged as a woman. I was like, okay, what do we do? So I started a new academy, a fresh, a grassroots, a democratic alternative, where I ask librarians, me and 50 to 100 women, working for free 7 months, day and night. But you know, women, we know all about working for free. You know, so everybody did it. And we asked librarians to nominate, and we asked people around the world to vote. First time in history, totally transparency, and guess who won? And we had money coming in from Brazil and everywhere, and guess who won? Without quotas, without anything. Marie Skånde, a black woman, my God. You know, after all these, I mean, since the Nobel Prize was established, 1903, only 13 women has won the prize. That is telling. Okay, finally, the cultural profile that was accused, whatever, is in jail. And this is my most recent book, and I know I have no time to talk about it, but this is the most important. It's about 20 women, mothers, in the so-called no-go zones in Sweden. You know, you heard Donald Trump saying what happened last night in Sweden. Well, he didn't care about the situation in Sweden, and nobody really cared about these mothers that lose and lost their kids in shootings. The last couple of years, we had a low-intense war going on in the most peaceful country in the world. But these lives are not, nobody's counting these lives. And these mothers, everybody talks about them, and nobody talks to them. Nobody includes them, nobody invites them, and everybody accuses them, oh, they're so oppressed by their own cultures, religions, and by their own men. They don't see they're part of the oppression. And there's so much hypocrisy. So I interviewed these mothers that lost their kids in shootings, that nobody cared about, and the judicial system did nothing. And I interviewed mothers that raised role models against all odds, and mothers that were beaten almost to death and had to flee from their homes and so on. And first, Sweden was in shock. And then I have received so many awards, but not a single Swedish crown to be able to write more.
Thank you so much.
The only thing I can say, because they're going to kick me out from here, I'm used to that. I want to thank you. I think we should start celebrating. That's why I dressed up today, not only because I knew my icon would be here, Angela Davis, but we have to start celebrating the breakthrough. We have to start dancing in the graves of the patriarchy. Thank you.
Thank you.